Okay, so I based my project on a software that already exists called the Electronic Command Center, or ECC. This software is an electronic medical record, EMR, that was built from scratch by my company, and I wanted to find ways to improve upon it. So the problem that this EMR is trying to solve is that employees of care on site need to document their interactions with injured workers so that they can keep track of the health and recovery of the injured worker. I did some research to see how nurses were using the ECC and also just EMRs in general, and these are the questions I wanted answered by doing this research. So, what is the best way to document a medical record and why? What is missing in the medical documentation world? What and how do you document? How do you collaborate and how do you consume info? I interviewed four nurses that work for Care on Site, and then I wrote everything they each said on these sticky notes. So each color here represents a different nurse, and then I grouped them together based on the common threads I was finding to find what everyone was saying. So I know this picture is kind of small, so I listed out these categories here, and then within each category, there were also several common subcategories. So, by doing these interviews, I found that the nurses' goals were to manage their daily tasks, collaborate efficiently with others who contribute to someone's medical record, and use documentation systems efficiently so they don't have to duplicate work. I wanted to look into what our competitors were doing to try to help users meet these goals, and I found that a lot of our competitors are not specific to occupational health, just medical based in general. A lot of them don't have a client facing side as well as an internal side, and then two of them have a task management system, but these task management systems are lacking. They're not necessarily good at helping users meet their goals. They exist, but they're not super useful. So, what I found is that every nurse I interviewed was using a third party program to manage their daily tasks. So, whether that be email or Word or Excel or just a pen and paper, everybody was having to supplement their use of the EMR to manage their tasks. So, I wanted to focus on a task management system where users wouldn't have to use a separate program in order to manage those tasks. Based on those interviews and goals, I made this persona. Her name is Melissa Adams. She's an older woman who has been a nurse for quite a while. She has a medium comfort level with new technologies, so she doesn't love having to learn new complicated things, but she knows that she generally is able to if she needs to. She often works remotely and she charts differently if she's in a hurry versus if she has plenty of time. She wants to chart quickly, efficiently, and concisely while also taking great care of the patient, and it's super important to her that her EMR be organized. I really like this quote here: if it wasn't charted, it wasn't done. Every single nurse I talked to said this, so I definitely wanted to include that in here. This was the first user flow I created. These were my initial thoughts of how this task management system would work. So I wanted the software to recognize the user and then auto assign tasks to them during their working hours. Then a user would be able to add notes to a task, they would perform a task, they would mark the task as done, and then basically they would rinse and repeat until all the tasks were completed. These were my initial sketches of what I thought that might look like. I did some usability testing on these, and one of the main things I found is that this column here entitled Notes was really confusing people because we have another section in our software called Internal Notes, and so people were confused and they were unsure if those two sections were related to each other. I wanted to go into feature prioritization next because before I started wireframing, I wanted to make sure that I had a clear idea of what was important to include in the software now. So this is what I decided was important to include now. So everybody should have their own individual tables that show their personal tasks. They needed the ability to add a task description to the task. And then instead of having the software assign the tasks, for now, I wanted the managers to view who did a task and also be in charge of assigning those tasks. This is my updated user flow. So basically, a user would view their personal task list, and these tasks have been assigned by a supervisor. They would review the case because that's important to do before you begin working on a task. They would be able to add task info, they would perform the task, and then I wanted the software to mark the task as done instead of the user, and then again, just rinse and repeat until all their tasks were completed. This is my wireframe here. It looks pretty similar to those sketches. And then I made that wireframe into a prototype and did some more usability testing, and these were the main things I found. So people wanted to click on the task info column to type task info. Nobody knew how to get back to the task list once they left it. They wanted a way to review the case from the task list, and then they wanted to be able to view task info after they've left the task list page. So I'm just going to show you a few screens on my prototype to kind of explain how I decided to solve those problems. So first off, I had to create a manager view of the software if I wanted managers to be able to assign tasks. So how I did that is, this is it, and as you can see, it looks the same as the personal task lists that I had already built. The main difference is that when you come to these actions here, you have this third option called Assign Task, and again, only managers would be able to see this third option. So they would hit Assign Task, they would choose from a drop-down menu who they wanted to assign it to, they would hit Save, and then the status would change to Assigned. So then let's say I am just a regular nurse, I'm not a manager, and that task was assigned to me. This is what my personal task list would look like. So when I first come in, I would know that I'm responsible to complete these two tasks. I made the task info box clickable. So once you click it, you can add your task info. You can also view a summary of the case by clicking on the case number here. And then once you leave the task list and you view the encounter, I added this top bar up here and I made it really obvious so that first of all, it tells you what you're working on, and then it gives you that task info that you had typed on on the task list so that you can see that while you're working on the case. And then I also included this return to task list button here at the top in this obvious bar so that if you need to go back to the task list during any point, it's really easy and obvious how you do that. So this is what I built to hopefully solve this problem of nurses having to use different programs to manage their tasks. I hope this meets the goal of being able to manage their tasks directly in the EMR. And on my final usability testing, I got some pretty good feedback. So that's pretty much everything I have. Thanks for your time.